Hey guys, what's happening? So we are back for more of our coverage on Ultimate Black Panther. And as we continue to see the secrets of this sentient vibranium get revealed by way of how it's changing T'Challa, more people are finding out, and it's setting us up for a ton of things to come crashing together in this series. And I'll talk about what all those things are by the end of this video. But if you need to get caught up with what's been going on with Ultimate Black Panther, on Earth 6160, I have the full playlist down in the description, as well as a link to our recent talk on Ultimate Universe 1 year in, where I did a summary of what's happened in this first year, as well as a preview for what's to come for the second half. But with that said, let's get into it. But first, be sure to drop a like if you're enjoying these videos, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so jumping back into Ultimate Black Panther, in our last talk we got to know a bit more about the ultimate sorceress supreme, who's currently making her way back to Wakanda alongside of Killmonger and Storm. But we don't see her arrival just yet, because the story's still jumping back and forth between what's going on with her and the war in Africa between T'Challa and Khonshu. And eventually what we're following with both of them is going to come together. But first, with us going back to T'Challa, I want you guys to keep in mind some of the things that the sorceress said, with her mentioning that magic is a science that people don't understand, as well as her saying that she knows that she's small in the fabric of the universe. Because together these things speak of her knowledge of science and magic, as well as how she views herself in comparison to the two. And not only is that a position of power for her to know her limitations, but as a sorceress supreme, she has an understanding of the greater power that causes her to respect it, and it allows her to use it to her advantage. And that's basically the opposite of what we've seen lately with T'Challa, where in his case he's showing more pride and ignorance than humility and understanding of vibranium and this new element Khonshu's used against him. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind, because when the Sorceress Supreme arrives, she'll either be that perfect piece of the puzzle that T'Challa's missing, or we might see some crazy plot twist where she has her own motives. But nonetheless, for this one, when we come back to Africa, we find one of Moon Knight's generals, who's waiting to make an offer to T'Challa. But instead of T'Challa showing up here, he's met by the arrival of Shuri. So of course he sees this as Wakanda's king being too afraid to make his way out here and meet him face to face, but Shuri's just like, whatever you needed to tell him, you can tell me. So he lets her know Moon Knight has an offer for Wakanda, an offer of peace. So Shuri warns him that he should be careful and not try anything. So dude's just like, well, I gotta be careful, I got this whole army. And that's when Shuri reveals to him that she's not out here alone. And so after Shuri makes it clear that she's prepared for whatever, this guy assures her that they didn't come here for violence, but instead they're offering to split the territory between Khonshu-Ra and Wakanda. And he even says that West Africa is allowed to choose its alliance. But we already know that this is a bogus offer, because prior to this, Khonshu has been using mind manipulation to get people on his side, which for the most part has been for the purpose of making them soldiers. And as for the other civilians, he'll perform acts that seem to be miracles so that people believe everything he's saying about being a god, and eventually choose him because it seems like the right thing to do. So even if Khonshu would have honored this peace offering and support this plan for democracy, it would already have been rigged from the jump. So even now with Shuri turning it down, and mainly because this would just be allowing the people who tried to kill them to gain more territory. But regardless of how you look at it, this quote-unquote peace offering would only benefit Khonshu-Ra, because sooner or later they're gonna come for the rest. So this guy just tells Shuri that Wakanda didn't care about the regions surrounding them, not until they knew about the sun knowledge of Khonshu-Ra. And he was hoping when Shuri showed up that she would see things different from T'Challa. But instead she just calls out all the reasons why this wouldn't make sense, which once again is the brainwashing, pretending to be a god. So Shuri just tells him there will only be peace when you leave this land, or when you're driven from it. So this dude's just like, okay, so Wakanda wants war. And right there, I'm just kind of like, oh, all right, so you're not even going to try to deny the brainwashing. But instead, what he does here is tell her that he has another offer. And because he suspects that T'Challa is able to see and hear him right now, he speaks directly to T'Challa and lets him know that his next offer is one of a more ancient approach, where the Black Panther would face the Moon Knight, and the victor would decide the fate of this land, of the vibranium, and the future. And if the Black Panther accepts, this would of course be a fight to the death. And with T'Challa hearing this, he plans to accept. But when he tells this to Okoye and Shuri, they tell him right away that this is not a good idea. And it really just goes back to what I mentioned before about T'Challa being filled with pride and not really understanding much of the science that's involved here. Because it's most likely that Khonshu is setting this whole thing up as a trap, but at the same time, it's not really T'Challa's fault. Because from what we've seen in the first 10 issues or so, it's not like this is the type of person he's always been. But instead, it's more so the case of him being corrupted from within, or more or less changing from the man they once knew him to be. And for a moment here, Shuri tries tries to call him out on it and tell him that he's not well, but he just tells her to deliver the message. And right after that, he tells the two of them to leave. And as the two of them go, T'Challa's like, tell Matron Amala I need to see her alone. But when Shuri and Okoye leave, Okoye tells Shuri clearly something is changing within him, which right there sounds a lot like the prophecy that Matron Amala told T'Challa back in issue 5. When she was explaining to him the origin of vibranium and its opposite, and how he would find it and it would change him. And we've already seen much of this play out throughout this series, with some of it taking place before the conversation with Matron Amala, and the rest of it continuing to play out after. But at the same time, we don't know where this is going to lead T'Challa to, or what exactly this change is going to change him into, because as Matron Amala's prophecy is coming true, these events are unfolding in ways that are unexpected, which makes sense because it keeps us guessing, since we don't know how or what exactly or where exactly this change is taking T'Challa to. And the only thing we're shown now is that Okoye and Shuri know that something is going on with T'Challa, which makes sense because they're the two closest people to him, which also leads to them figuring more of this out. Because after talking to T'Challa, when Okoye tells Shuri that something's changing in him, she opens the conversation to any suggestions so they can figure this out. And mind you, at this point in time, Okoye, she's seen the whole thing with T'Challa having new powers and controlling vibranium with his mind, so there's really nothing Shuri could say here that'll sound too crazy. So Shuri ends up telling Okoye that she believes vibranium has its secrets that no generation has sensed or found. So she goes on to say, what if vibranium has a consciousness or something captured within it? What if it has given rise to two kingdoms to place them in conflict like pawns? So Okoye is just like, well, yeah, it does sound a little crazy, but if that were the case, why would vibranium do that? Why would vibranium want war? And it's not like Shuri has all the answers here, but her guess is that it's because of what will remain after, whatever that might be. So it's not so much the case of vibranium just wanting war, but it's more so like it's using them as a means to an end. So the two of them agree that they cannot let T'Challa accept this offer, and they can't let him know that they're trying to prevent it. Because now this isn't just about being concerned for his safety, because there's so much more at stake. And so following this, we go back over to T'Challa as he's heading out, and when he does, he makes sure to turn off the tracker on his vehicle. And instead of us seeing him meet with Matron Amala, we get this inner monologue where he's talking about how the traditions of Wakanda has kept them in isolation and how it's caused them to live in a vacuum. And so all of a sudden, with Moon Knight stepping into that vacuum and being there for the people outside of Wakanda, this is causing more people to look to and believe in Khonshu. So it's like T'Challa's ruling a kingdom placed in a land where he's a stranger. But what's more important now than being a king who's known to more people outside of Wakanda is the issues that these people are having right now, which prior to this he's been blind and ignorant to, delivered from it with pageantry, as he would say. So it's here where he decides to get out there and not only learn more but do something about it. And this leads to him finding a medical transport that's being stopped and looted by some mercenaries. So T'Challa steps in to help them out. And it leads to a moment here where this dude points his gun at him. So T'Challa's like, you think that gun protects you, don't you? You believe in it. Then let's test your faith against my own. And this dude's just like, okay, yeah, this guy's on something. And he's just making a mockery of him at first, only for T'Challa to take this dude down and use him as a human shield. And what this ends up turning into, aside from T'Challa just wrecking these guys, is a bit of a teaching moment. Because for one, with T'Challa taking these guys down, they weren't worried in the slightest about anyone coming along and trying to stop them. Because at first they were even mocking him like, who are you, some type of local hero? Which just shows him another example, because this isn't the first time we saw him stop mercenaries out here. But this just shows him another example of how no one is expecting someone to show up and help. And this continues when he tries to tell these medics that they're safe now, because they don't even know if he was just stopping the mercs so he could rob them himself. But eventually one of these guys tell him that he's injured, and the guy offers to give him medical attention. And when he does, this guy tells T'Challa how him and the other medics, they go between different cities, just trying to help who they can, and how it's pretty common that mercenaries will show up and just take what they want. So T'Challa asks this guy if the Black Panther's efforts have been assisting him, and this dude's just like, the Black Panther? Never heard of him. And it's just like, oh man, I know that had to hurt. But again, it just goes back to what T'Challa was saying about being a king who's living in a vacuum. Because outside of Wakanda, no one's concerned about that. They got their own problems. But this guy goes on to say there is someone named Moon Knight, some kind of deity, and I don't know. Can't really understand it. Some people believe in him. So again, in the case of Moon Knight, there's at least conversations of this godlike figure in the distance. But when this guy turns around to get some painkillers, T'Challa pulls a Batman and he just disappears on him. And this guy's not totally taken off guard by it, because it's like, what else do you expect from a stoic man on a hovering motorcycle? But again, for T'Challa, this was a teachable moment, with him seeing more of the current state of what's happening outside of Wakanda. And with the whole transformation thing aside, What he's come to find here, it supports what he was already leaning towards from the start of this series, with him wanting to change Wakanda's traditions. But fast forward to now, and including everything that's happened since, it's caused T'Challa to move forward with a more spearheaded and reckless approach. So as he's leaving, he reaches out to Shuri, who didn't know where T'Challa was because he'd gone dark since he left. But it's here where he tells her that he's going to take Moon Knight's challenge. He's going to shame him and then he's going to kill him. So in response, Shuri asks him, "Is this your connection with vibranium speaking? Or do you think that sounds like wisdom?" So T'Challa tells her, "I think we have failed this region. I think there's much more we need to do. I think Moon Knight was inevitable. We can understand vibranium. But first, we need to understand Africa. I want detailed reports, every criminal network, every humanitarian crisis, all of it. Wakanda will be isolated no more. I will accept his challenge. And after a god is dead, it will be Wakanda that gives people new belief. I am coming home." So yeah, there are a lot of things that are about to come crashing together. From the death match between Khonshu and T'Challa, the arrival of the Sorceress Supreme, the consciousness of vibranium, the spy twist that we have yet to see come to fruition, as well as the other prophecy about T'Challa and the Woman of Light, who had said that he will bond with in the time of war, that will eventually give him an heir. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's about to come crashing together, because it's about to get crazy. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.